you out today. We're in for a real treat today. A lot of knowledge will be given, and I hope everyone enjoys our program. I would now like to give thanks to the people who presented this lecture series, Pat Miller and the Committee on Lectures funded by GSB, Dr. George Jackson from Minority Student Affairs, and the Pre-Legal Education Committee. We'll now have Marcus Tillery from the staff of Black Cultural Center come and welcome our guests.
Good evening. Giving honor to God and our ancestors who propelled us into this 21st century. I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit ahead of myself and say 21st. I think I'll be here. I'd like to thank you all for coming out and joining me and welcoming our speaker tonight. On behalf of the Black Cultural Center, the Committee on Lectures, Office of Minority Student Affairs, and others of us who fight and live by the truth, I welcome you, and I beckon you to not shrug from the truth if you hear it tonight, and you will. Thanks for coming out.
And Anna Evans will come and introduce our speaker.
To introduce a well-known personality. He hails from Demopolis, Alabama, where he attended Central High School in Mobile, Alabama. After high school, he became a student at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. There, as a political science major, he knew his calling would be in the legal arena in the United States. In 1963, he graduated from Southern University School of Law, magna cum laude, with his Juris Doctor. Most recently, he received a Doctor of Laws from Grambling State University in 1987. Since his school days, he has been active with many professional avocations. His bar and court admissions include the United States Court of Military Appeals, Supreme Court admissions, United States Court of Appeals 7th Circuit, United States District Court, Northern District, Supreme Courts of both Louisiana and Illinois, and the United States Supreme Court. In the past, this highly visible individual has taught at Northwestern University School of Law, past president of Operation PUSH, director of the Northwest Task Force for Commission Report, Search and Destroy Black Panthers and Police, held posts with the U.S. Office of Solicitor General, and past president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. At the present time, he is an attorney for the Grambling State University alumni, in which he is representing them in a desegregation case that is before the Supreme Court. He is also on the new Public Enemy album, Into the Terror Dome. Many know him as TNT. I present to you attorney Thomas Nathaniel Todd.
I shall be free. I must be free. I will be free. Only when the eyes have it can the we be free. That is what the poet meant when he said, I sent my soul into the invisible, some letter of that afterlife to spell, and by my soul returned to me and answered, I myself am heaven and hell. Thank you so very much, Anna, for that warm and generous introduction. I am so very pleased to join you as you celebrate this Law Week from the Black Cultural Center. Those of you who have come out, it is a pleasure being at Iowa State this evening. One of the greatest pleasures about being here is that I go back to Chicago tomorrow morning. I don't have to stay. I'm glad to see all of you come out tonight. I was wondering whether or not some of you would be here. When I watched your local news, I noticed that they were protesting the Moscow circus because of cruelty to animals. They said the bears live in cages too long, and they are not treated well, and they are beaten and they are whipped. And I wondered as I saw the protesters outside of the door, Brother Marcus, whether they'd ever been to some of the prisons in the United States to see how the mostly brothers and poor whites and Hispanics are treated. But I'm so very pleased to share this evening with you. I chose to open my speech or lecture with the recitation, "I shall be free." I chose to do that because my premise is a very simple one. 28 million blacks in South Africa are not free, and 30 million blacks in America are not free. Whether we want to face that fact or not, it is a fact. In America, one of the richest countries in the world, the most advanced health facilities and health care, black people die before white people. Black people suffer tuberculosis 2.5 times more than white people. In America, a developed nation, we earn as a people less money, we get less education, we have less wealth, and we are more unemployed. More black babies die in the first year in America than in many underdeveloped countries. A black man is worse off, Anna, in Harlem than he is in Bangladesh. Our young people are confused and being ripped off. For as a people in America, we are still trapped in a strange land, in a hostile land. We are trapped somewhere between servitude and liberation, somewhere between slavery and freedom, and we are trapped in the evolution of a circle. I stand here to say to you tonight, whether you consider it fair, whether you consider it just, whether you consider it real, but it is, there still beats in the heart and soul of America a fundamental hatred for black people. It is not fair, it is not just, but it is true. For you see, when you look at the history of America, and you must look at America's history, as a matter of fact, American history is so devoid of contributions by anybody but white people until in many instances we do not call American history history. We call it his story and not our story. But we realize that when you look at the history of America, and you must know the past so you can understand the present and plan for the future. When you look at the history of America, the one thing that you must understand is that black Americans, or African Americans, or Afro-Americans, or whatever we decide to call ourselves, did not come to America through Ellis Island. We did not come through America yearning to be free. We did not come to America as immigrants looking for a better world. The thing that you must understand about how blacks got to America is that we were kidnapped and brought here as slaves, not brought here on ships, not brought here in any comfort, but brought here through the Middle Passage. Those of you who have not seen the illustrations of the Middle Passage need to see it, black and white, Hispanic men and women. You need to see how a human being can exist lying down with 18 inches of space. That's the way black people were brought here. As a matter of fact, so many black people died and so many black people were thrown overboard or jumped overboard until it is told that from West Africa all the way into the United States, sharks followed the ships eating the bodies. When we talk about the Holocaust of the Jews, it's 6 million or 7 million. What you must understand is that we don't know how many black people died in the Middle Passages. the figure has been put as high as 20 to 40 million. Yet those black people who came and survived were a selective group of people. Another myth which you must have exploded because you don't study in depth this history in many instances is that blacks who were kidnapped and brought here were not roustabouts. They were not criminals. They were kings and they were princes and princesses. They were individuals who were artisans and they knew how to sing and to perform and to build and to trade. As a matter of fact, they were advanced in their civilization, so that it was no surprise to many of us that the African slave knew how to speak many languages, and the African slave knew how to build the ironwork in New Orleans, and the African slave knew how to construct because they did it in Africa. But if you are going to destroy a people, you must lie to that people and lie to yourself. And that's what America did. America created the lie about black Americans. As a matter of fact, if you are going to destroy a people, you must lie about them in every medium. In art, you must lie about them. You must show them as caricatures. You must show them in stereotypical roles. In literature, if you are going to destroy a people, you must portray them in a grotesque manner. And in history, if you are going to destroy a people, you must make them invisible. You must not let them know or anyone know the contributions that people made, because you are going to make them worthless. But to do that with black Americans, you had to lie. You had to lie about who discovered the North Pole. It was not Perry. As a matter of fact, it was Matthew Henson. As a matter of fact, Perry was sick and infirm, and Matthew Henson took him to the North Pole. But if you are going to destroy a people, you must lie about that contribution. If you're going to destroy a people, you cannot tell them that one of their own invented the gas mask or one of their own invented the telephone. You see, Alexander Graham Bell did not invent the telephone. It was invented by Lewis H. Latimer. But if you are going to destroy a people, you must lie to them about every aspect of their existence. And that's what America has done. Carter G. Woodson teaches us in 1933. Carter G. Woodson, considered by many the father of black history. And our position is not that our history is any better than anybody else's history, but it's just as good. Why should you omit a discussion about our contributions unless you are lying to us? Well, Carter G. Woodson teaches us why it was done. Listen to me. If you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his action. When you determine what a man shall think, you do not have to concern yourself about what he will do. If you make a man feel that he is inferior, you do not have to compel him to accept an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. If you make a man think that he is justly an outcast, you do not have to order him to the back door. He will go to the back door, and if there is no back door, he will make a back door. I mean, if they serve meals in the cafeteria here at Iowa State at 8 to 10, or 10 to 12 for lunch, or 5 to 6 for dinner, you find yourself somewhere between 8 and 10 if you want to eat. If you want to eat in the cafeteria, you find yourself going to get breakfast in the cafeteria. It is conditioned behavior. It is a kind of brainwashing, because I guess they don't do that here at Iowa State. Now, in law, if you want to further destroy a people, then you use the very laws that you say were designed to protect everybody to destroy that particular group. Whether it's women, whether it's gays, whether it's the disabled, you use the laws because, see, when you then have it in the context of law, then it becomes legitimate. It is not something which you question. Well, the first lesson that we learn here tonight is that America was founded by white men, for white men, and about white men. Now, I didn't write this history, but you need to understand this. Don't gloss over it. All of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were white men, white wealthy men. All of the ratifiers of the United States Constitution were white wealthy men. As a matter of fact, the only persons at the beginning of this country who could vote, the only persons who could own property, the only persons who could get an education, the only person who could enter into a contract, white men. Well, black people were mentioned in the United States Constitution along with Native Americans or Indians in Article 1, Section 2. Now, I know you've had constitutional law. I know you're studying all of this, so just bear with me for a while I talk to you about somebody else who doesn't know it. Article 1, Section 2 of the 1787 United States Constitution says that black people, slaves, and Native Americans shall be counted as 3/5 of a person, and then only for apportionment and taxation. And that was in the original United States Constitution. So that in the Constitution of the United States of America, there is in its grain and in its fiber racism. Now that's a lesson which is very difficult for people to understand, but it's right there if you read the Constitution. I mean, how many of you have ever read the United States Constitution? Show me your hands, class. How many of you have read the United States Constitution in the last 6 months? The whole Constitution, with all of the amendments. Well, how many of you have ever read the Declaration of Independence in the last 6 months? Oh, I'm not talking about civics class in high school or elementary school. I'm talking about now when you are forming your opinions about what's going on. Well, how in the world can you understand what's operating on us if you don't understand the tools? You should read the Emancipation Proclamation, read the Declaration of Independence, read all of these documents so you can see that America was founded on a white male supremacy doctrine which discriminated against blacks and females and everybody else. You must understand, as LeBron Bennett teaches us, that 1 year before the Mayflower, all black people who came to America were not slaves. There were some free black people. Some black people owned slaves, as a matter of fact, and in servitude. It wasn't until 1667 in Virginia that the laws were passed stripping black people of their humanity. It was not accidentally done. It was not done by happenstance. It was done deliberately and in concert. As a matter of fact, the initial discussion by the white male legislators was that blacks should be stripped of their humanity because they were not Christians. Say, well, wait a minute, you can't do that. So we got some white people who are not Christians. So if you use religion as a form of discrimination, you're going to catch some white people. So they say, well, no, they are different from us. They are African. They are dark-skinned. We will make the distinction based upon their race. So in 1667, Virginia, and not long thereafter, Maryland passed statutes which says that blacks could not testify, could not serve on juries, could not own land, and could not vote. It was not an accident. It was not happenstance. It was deliberately done. So that you have a situation now with the United States Constitution in 1787 institutionalizing this degradation of a whole race of people. In 1863, to overcome the 1857 Dred Scott decision, and you ought to read Dred Scott, you see, because we talk about people who are discriminated against in America, but no other people in America ever had a Supreme Court decision which declared them judicially inferior. In 1857, Justice Taney, in the Dred Scott decision, Dred Scott versus Stanford, we're talking about how laws are used to oppress people, said that black people, their ancestors and their descendants have no rights which a white man is bound to respect. So that black people, their ascendants and their descendants, when the words like persons, like citizen were used in the Declaration of Independence and used in the United States Constitution, it did not refer to black people. So what you find in the very law that is supposed to protect black people, you find an insidious racism and an insidious sexism. So you must understand that white men with property were given the right to vote in 1787, but blacks did not get the right to vote until 83 years later, and women did not get the right to vote until 133 years later. But I'm ahead of myself. So in 1857, we had the Dred Scott decision saying that black people are less than human. In 1863, you had the Emancipation Proclamation saying, well, we will at least free some of the black people or some of the slaves in states and parishes and counties that are in rebellion. That's Abraham Lincoln, you know, the great emancipator. Well, Abraham Lincoln didn't free anybody. He turned some blacks loose, but he didn't free them. As a matter of fact, Abraham Lincoln was a melancholy, incurable racist. He was committed, as a matter of fact, to sending blacks back to Africa. As a matter of fact, he commissioned a study to determine the feasibility of sending blacks back to Africa. If not Africa, then maybe Panama or some city, or maybe some of the other tropical climes that were suitable to the black person's temperament. Oh, but we had a surprise for Mr. Lincoln. His commissioner came back and said, well, Mr. Lincoln, I don't care how many ships you can get. Said these Negroes can procreate faster than your ships can navigate. So they're going to be here a long time. But you ought to know the other side of Abraham Lincoln. I won't let people dress him up for me, but you ought to read for yourself. Read the Lincoln-Douglas debates of 1858. Well, now listen to me. If Abraham Lincoln emancipated us in 1863, then why did we need the 13th Amendment in 1865? And then if we got the 13th Amendment in 1865, which gave us freedom, why did we need the 14th Amendment in 1868 to give us citizenship? And then if we got citizenship in 1868, why did we need the 15th Amendment in 1870 to give us the right to vote? And if we got the right to vote in 1870, then why do we still need civil rights statutes to go to school, civil rights statutes to be able to go to hotels, to come to this university? Why do we even need a 1990 civil rights statute? Why do we need the 1875 civil rights statute, 1866, 1968, 1964? Don't you understand that in this country they have used laws to create black people? Statutes and opinion. And even now, we are finding the debate on the 1990 Civil Rights Act. Well, they don't have to pass a law for a white person to get citizenship. They don't have to pass a law for a white person to go into open housing. It's only for black people. It is a trap. My problem with it, if you can create a people with laws, then you can uncreate them with laws. And in this country right now, if you repeal the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, and reverse the civil rights statutes, black people in this nation would be in formal slavery. That's what Ronald Reagan was working on. I'm going to get back to that. That's what Ronald Reagan was working on. You know, until he starts forgetting everything. But we're going to get back to that in just a moment. But you see the trap, do you understand? If I need a right, if I have to have a law to let me go out of that door or in this door, if you repeal that law that gives me that right, then as a result of that, I can't go out the door. Now, I'm from Alabama. In 1960, before most of you were born, I took a literacy test in Alabama to qualify to vote. Now, listen to me. In a participatory democracy, the United States Supreme Court has said the most precious right is a right to vote, because it is the right which protects all other rights. Yet when blacks were given the right to vote, they had all sorts of obstacles. In Texas, they had the white primary. In Oklahoma, they had the literacy test, and Louisiana, the literacy test, and in Alabama, the literacy test, and the poll tax. You didn't just walk down and sign your name and register to vote. I had the right in Alabama in 1960, 2.5 hours, an interpretation of the due process clause of the 14th Amendment. Now, it was fortunate that I had graduated from Southern University in political science, and I understood what I had to write on, so I wrote for 2.5 hours that due process is whatever is judicial inclusion and exclusion. I wrote that it's whatever is a part of our fundamental fairness. I wrote whatever is fair and equitable, and I kept writing and writing and writing. And when I took my paper to this registrar, who stood there with overalls on, this is a true story, he looked at my paper and he said, "I guess you passed," but I knew there was something wrong. He had the damn paper upside down. He couldn't read. He could not read. But yet it was this obstacle that I had to go through to qualify to vote, simply because I was black. There was no other reason. If I had been white, I could have registered for no reason at all. So where are we in what I call the evolution of a circle? Almost everything they teach us that goes around comes around. In Article 1, Section 2 of the United States original Constitution, blacks were 3/5 of a person, Native Americans. Now they got the census, the 1990 census. And whom can't they count? They can't find black folks. They can't find black folks. Now, let me tell you something. Let one brother commit a misdemeanor in downtown Des Moines, and they will find 500 black brothers who look just like him. But now, they cannot find black people to count. Now, you need to know something about the census. Whether you have sent it back in is not my issue. You should understand the fundamental racism in the census itself. In 1980, this country created 27 million white people. They counted some white people 3 times, and they can't find black people, but they counted some white people at school, at church, at lunch, at dinner. I'm serious. 27 million white people overcounted. The computer created them. The undercount for blacks was 9%. The overcount for whites was 6%. Why? Because the very method of the census using to count is built on a white middle class format. Nice little houses or nice little apartments that fit neatly in a row. Well, we don't always live that way. As a matter of fact, I took the census in 1960. I went from door to door, and I went to houses that looked like a single-family dwelling with 25 or 30 of us living inside. All I'm saying to you is that when you destroy a people totally, the destruction must be complete in everything that's done. Not just anything. There can be nothing left to happenstance. In October of 1987, when the stock market crashed, they called it what? They called it Black Monday. Well, now, they ain't got that many black folks working on Wall Street. How in the hell could they call it Black Monday? It's like my 10-year-old daughter at the time said, Daddy, Daddy, come quick. Say, they have named a Monday for us. I said, no, that's not what they mean. It is a part of what we call the psycholinguistics of racism. And you have to be sensitive to it and know that we are sensitive to it, because when you use it, either inadvertently or unconsciously, then you are perpetuating that myth. Why don't you call it White Monday? It was caused by white folks trading and double dipping and dealing. But I'm just talking to you that even in the most fundamental sense of what's going on, the psycholinguistics of racism, take the crime, the white-on-white crime in Eastern Europe. Have you read about the white-on-white crime in Eastern Europe? Have you heard about the white-on-white crime in Bulgaria, in Azerbaijan? Have you read about the white-on-white crime in Northern Ireland? Have you read about the white-on-white crime in Transylvania? Have you read about the white-on-white crime in Romania? No. Because when black people kill black people, they call it black-on-black crime. But when white people kill white people, they call it ethnically motivated. Oh, but you have to understand the difference. If a white person kills a white person in Azerbaijan, that's white-on-white murder. Or if a white person in Des Moines kills a white person, that's white-on-white murder, but it's never called that. And I want you to listen as you listen to the mass communications. But let a brother kill another brother, it's black-on-black crime. Let the brothers in Natal, South Africa, fight each other in the provinces, and it's black-on-black violence. Well, if that's black-on-black violence, then the violence in Northern Ireland is white-on-white violence. But since we don't control the media, and since we can't talk about what comes out, we have to accept it, and we say it too. Sure is a shame. This black-on-black crime has got to stop. Well, it does have to stop. but the white-on-white crime has to stop too. And what you must understand as students, as educators, as people who are beyond just the ordinary, what you must understand too is that most people are killed by friends and relatives. More than 80% of the murders are between friends and close associates. So if black people kill black people, and that's black on black crime, then white people killing white people is white on white crime. It's fair. If you look at television, if you listen to the radio, and if you read the newspaper, you would believe that most of the cocaine users in this nation are black. That's not true. Most of the cocaine users in this country are white men, more than 77%. If you look at television, you think that most of the people selling crack cocaine are young black teenagers. Well, that's what's on television. Don't you ever wonder to whom they are selling it? They show the black teenagers selling a little vial of crack, but they don't show you the white suburbanite who comes in, for instance, from Maryland and Virginia to buy it. When they busted somebody in California with $20 billion worth of cocaine, listen, we ain't got no brothers in this country, sisters either, who can import $20 billion worth of air. But you don't see the individual because there is this desire to create the image that the black community is more criminal than the white community, is more involved in dope than the white community. Not true. But you see, it's only with this kind of lie and this kind of infecting the very fiber of America could you have what happened in Boston with Charles Stewart, where a white man who shot his wife and himself simply said it was a black man. They didn't ask any questions. They went out and assumed that it was a black man. Only in a system, only in a country where the very fiber is racist can that happen. He was never questioned. His brothers never questioned. Now, they did some damage in Boston to black people in their houses simply because a white man, a lone white man, said that he and his wife had been attacked. Now, what you probably didn't read about is that in Georgia, just a year before that, a woman and her husband, both members of the Ku Klux Klan, said, the woman, my husband was attacked by a black man and killed. They stopped over 300 black men. Turns out that the woman shot her husband. She confessed because she was in love with another Klansman. But the question was never asked of her, and only because of the deep-seated racism in the fiber of the country was it not. Now, when we look at white college campuses, and I know you don't have this problem here, but over 300 white college campuses where racism has become rampant. You don't have trouble here, not this Iowa, this is a good school. We talk about schools like Ohio State, where they wouldn't let the black cheerleader cheer with the cheerleading squad, where she was put off to the side to cheer by herself. We're talking about the University of Wisconsin, where they had a mock slave auction. This is the college campus, not the skinhead camp. This is the college campus. Or the University of Michigan, where a white radio station run by students asked the question, why do all black people stink? And the answer was so that blind white people will know where they are. They put the radio station off the air, but it was too late. You see, freedom in this country operates in a context. And when the context ferments racial hatred, it not only is at the bottom, but it boils up to the top because it's never left. Ronald Reagan, generic Ronald Reagan, 1 year younger than dirt. Ronald Reagan created this climate which gave rise to this racism, which boiled over to the top. Ronald Reagan, what did he do He attacked affirmative action. He supported schools that discriminated against women and blacks with his Justice Department. He talked about a racial neutral country. He said to white America, it's all right to be white again. It's good to be white again. And then he suddenly let it be known that he was against Dr. King's birthday as a holiday. He suddenly let it be known that he was against extending the Civil Rights Act. And then he gave the impression to white students, unsuspecting white students, that black students were getting all the scholarship money, all the financial aid. And here you are with your mother and your father struggling, trying to go to school when that black student sitting next to you has all the money he or she wants. And I know they got the money because of the way they dress and the cars they drive. And so as a result of that, on the white college campuses, racial hatred started to crop up. And then Reagan put on the Supreme Court of the United States, out of 370 appointments, Ronald Reagan appointed 333 white men. Ideologues, conservatives. And so Ronald Reagan, for 8 years, fomented a climate of hatred in America toward blacks and toward women and toward gays. Then enter George Bush. You know, George. So he's much better. No, he is not. George Bush, as a matter of fact, who won the election? Who won it? Willie Horton won the election. Willie Horton, the black man that George Bush created in what we call the Willie Horton syndrome, the rapist who raped a white woman while he was on furlough, was the thing that carried George Bush into the White House, tapping that well of resentment and hatred which beats in the heart and soul of America. Ronald Reagan, George Bush, as a matter of fact, David Duke, that many of you would put down in Louisiana, is a son of Ronald Reagan, the brother of George Bush, and the cousin to a lot of people who are right here at our state. Now, you cannot, under any circumstance, divorce these circumstances from set-aside attacks, affirmative action, and even some of our black students and some of our black scholars, like Clarence Thomas, who just went to the Supreme Court. I'm against affirmative action. I'm against set-aside programs because they discriminate against white people. Well, they don't. They don't, and I don't apologize for them. You see, you would not need an affirmative action if you had not had a negative action. You would not have need for equal opportunity had there not been unequal opportunity. You would not have to recruit students at our state who are black, other than white men, I should say, unless you had had an overabundance of white men. What's my theory? America was founded on the premise of white male supremacy. Then some of even our black scholars say, well, I'm not in favor of quotas. There's always been a quota. 0 is a number. When you got 100% white and 0 black, 100% men and 0 women, that's a quota. 0 is a quota. 0 is a number. And as a matter of fact, some of you already have found out there can be a -0. My bank teaches me that every so often, that you can have a -0. So don't get caught up in this mess dealing with affirmative action. If you've got a 10% set aside for minorities, you've got a 90% reservation for white men. But if you're accustomed to having all of it, you don't want to even deal with giving up 10%. And then we get to fighting over the 10%, they end up with the 10% too. Now, there's a strange thing about the white male, and I'm not putting any of you down in here who might be white males. I'm talking about rich, powerful white men who are in charge. And ain't none of you in this room powerful and in charge. If you were, you wouldn't be sitting in this damn lecture. So don't get offended by what I'm saying. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about history. When it becomes convenient for the white male to take advantage of the laws even for black people, they take advantage of the laws. Dan Quayle went to law school under an affirmative action program. I mean, the dude is so light that he had to cheat to get in night school in law school. There were twins in Boston who said they were black firefighters, worked 12 years in a program designed for black people. You see, when you lie about a people and their culture and their race, you also want to take advantage of it when you can. I remember when I was a child, that music by Ray Charles, B.B. King and Bobby Blue Bland and Lightning Hopkins and John Lee Hooker was considered race music, primordial music. Those are animals dancing like that. We dance the foxtrot and the square dance. Those people over there dancing like that, they are primitive. But then along comes Elvis Presley, and what we find out is that they really didn't dislike the music, they wanted it whiterized. So Elvis Presley stole everything that he could and made $1 billion, and white America accepted it. Hasn't changed. Got a group out now called New Kids on the Block. I want you to know I read and look at all this stuff. It is still the same thing. George Michaels, Linda Ronstadt, all of them taking the same music that they rejected. As a matter of fact, the racism was so widespread in the music industry, you couldn't show a black person on the cover of an album. Now I look at MTV, and I look at BET and VH1, and I look at some white kids, I say, I never knew they had that much rhythm. I mean, they are hip-hopping more than the black students to house music and club music. So what I'm saying is, every time there has been something in the black community that has been good, and sometimes not so good, when it's not accepted because it comes from black people, if you make it white, then it becomes acceptable. That's unfortunate, but it's a lesson that you have to understand. Why do I say this in terms of the struggle and where we are? Well, what I want you to understand as students is that you cannot deny educational opportunity to blacks because of race, deny decent housing to blacks because of race, deny employment to blacks because of race, deny credit to blacks because of race, deny loans to blacks because of race, and then say that the reason that black people are down is because they're black. See, there are areas in this country where black people do not have equal access. You hear about the crime on the streets, but you don't hear enough about the crime in the suites. Now, I worry about a $50 check bouncing. I'm a lawyer, supposed to have some esteem,